Welcome to the Driven Moms Answering Adversity interview series. Stories of success through setbacks from Mom Elevated. Together we can shine a light on how normal challenges and struggles are, along with how we can overcome and rise above them. And today we have Kayla here to share her story with us. I'm really excited to dive in. So Kayla, would you mind just taking the reins and telling us a little bit about your story to get us started?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as everybody knows, my name is Kayla. I'm actually a mom of two toddlers that are just 15 months apart. My oldest has been diagnosed, so he is on the autism spectrum. And then I myself have a couple of hidden disabilities. I have a visual disability, newly diagnosed hearing disability, and I also am neurodivergent myself. So that's a little bit about the background. Both the babies were born in the COVID pandemic. So my son was 2020, literally when the world was shutting down. And then my daughter came not long later in 2021. So I have two babies born in the pandemic that are not twins, which is not
Wild.
so common. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
wild.
that's crazy. Oh, that's exciting. Do you identify with the neurospicy title, or do you?
It's funny that you say that because I've seen that term more and more often in the last couple months. And I mean, maybe it depends on the day. I can be a little bit more, reserved and kind of on the outskirts. And then I could kind of have my surge of energy. And I think it really depends if I'm around my comfort people. So my best friend and my husband would probably say neurospicy, and to the rest of the world, probably not, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. I love
Yeah.
that. That's a great way of looking at it. I always just wanted to ask somebody, so I appreciate
Yeah.
diving into that. What adversity have you answered and how? In the biggest, because obviously usually there's a lot of adversity that we all kind of rise up, especially if you have multiple things you're dealing with, and then your child is also diagnosed with something. That's a lot all in one, and having two in the pandemic itself. That's a lot of, but what would you say is the biggest adversity that you've had to answer throughout your journey, and
That's a
how?
good question. I think for us, or for me personally, it would be with my own like neurodivergent brain and my own disabilities, right? Having to speak up and really learn how to advocate on behalf of my son, because I mean, although he's gaining words now, right, he genuinely truly like didn't have a voice, not just, he's a young toddler, but genuinely didn't even really have the words. And so navigating the healthcare system with somebody, as myself, with a visual disability, a hearing disability, to advocate and trying to go through the trenches and have people listen to your concerns and not brush you off. Almost automatically flagging me as like the over anxious mom, or the mom that had the baby in the pandemic and she's just over analyzing everything. I think that would be probably the biggest challenge, having people take me seriously and advocating for my son's needs.
Do you notice, so I find it interesting too that you have one male that you're dealing with and then you yourself female. Do you find
Mhm.
that they take it more seriously with your son than they do with you, or still no because he was so young and you were just the concerned mom?
Yeah, I think that is probably fairly equal because I was, advocating on his behalf. I truly, went through the trenches and was kind of just blanketed as like, yeah, the over anxious mom, or the one that who's worrying. Because when you look at my son, and I've had people say this to me, which I don't really know what this means, but he doesn't look autistic, or oh, you have a visual disability, or you can't hear me, right? When people see me in person or a photo, they wouldn't necessarily suspect that those are challenges that I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, my daughter, actually, my middle daughter, I was just telling you before we hopped on that we just got back from a Shriner's appointment, and that has been something. She has a disability on her right side, right leg mostly, right foot
Okay.
mostly. But we have no diagnostic. We have no idea what really has caused it or what is contributing to it. And so it's been a journey since she was 18 months old. She's now almost 10. She'll be 10 this year, and we go 2 or 3 times a year. And yeah, same. It's just advocating, pushing for answers, because a lot of times it, like where we started to where we are, realizing you have to come up with questions to ask and you have to really do some of the diving, because not all of the doctors will just be forthcoming with what you should do next or what's the next step or what should you look at instead of what their specialty is. So I find that really, really interesting in the medical care system. It's so nice and so refreshing when you do find somebody who will not only listen, but also help you try to uncover some answers and things like that. On the other side of things, what can you tell us a little bit about what you do as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, absolutely. So when my son Eli was born, we were going through the trenches of sleep. I mean, natural, right? Like having a new baby, that brings its own level of being sleep deprived. But this was on a level that I didn't know was physically possible. And that really brought me to kind of think about sleep a little bit differently. And also, I was naive and truly didn't know what sleep training was. And so I thought, okay, well, my background actually is in nursing, and let's be proactive and see what we can do to improve his sleep before he hits 4 months. Because I can't go 4 months waking up every 45 minutes. I can't do,
Yeah.
won't do it. So I'm going to be proactive. So I did what I call sleep shaping, and that really was able to get us from waking up every 45 minutes to sleeping, 2 hours, then 4 hours. And then by 11 and a half weeks old, he slept 12 hours. And that was without sleep training, which was mind blowing, like so amazing. And then so that kind of just brought me to helping, friends that had little ones and giving them advice. Eli turned 6 months. I found out I was expecting our second, and tears flew because I thought, well, I can't be sleep deprived. Like, I can't do this and be sleep deprived again. So then I signed up for a certification course more for myself, like just so I could feel very educated in all aspects of sleep, thinking just because sleep shaping strategies that I used on Eli worked and the ones that I developed worked, what if they don't work on my next? So I got certified. I launched my business in the winter of 2021, and I work with parents one on one to help them achieve better, peaceful night's sleep for their full family unit. So that's what I do on that end. And I'm not sure if you're wanting to know about the second launch spinoff. Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay. So with all of that, now the kids are in the toddler stage. So Eli just turned 4 2 days ago. Veda girl's gonna be 3 soon. And I'm just not in the trenches of sleep like I was.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm not interested in it. I am. It's a huge passion. I will always be. But what's overruling my life right now is the fact that my child's autistic, and the fact that I myself have been diagnosed with ADHD. I'm actually awaiting my own autism assessment. And so that is like the pinnacle of my everyday life. And if anybody's listening to this and you are somebody who's been diagnosed with ADHD, you'll likely know that we go full force in those things that we are very passionate about.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of taken a spin, and I've created an account really focusing on not autism awareness, but autism acceptance, and just kind of, letting parents know that there's this big wide world out there and we can take our children with special needs and travel with them. That's a passion of ours, and really encourage them to do it, because the more that we give our children supported experiences, the more that I believe we're going to grow their capacity. And I've seen it for myself, someone with disabilities, like how far I've come because my mom, experienced different situations with me that I might have not wanted to necessarily sign up for, but it really shaped me. And then I've seen how far Eli's come in the last couple of years, and I truly believe it's from our travels and our different journeys.
I think that is so beautiful. I love the term sleep shaping from the first half. I think that's wonderful because it doesn't have that negative connotation around it as like training. You're not
Right.
training, you're shaping. And that seems more natural with their own sleep cycles. I think that's wonderful, first of all.
Thank
And
you.
second of all, I love that. I just saw something recently, it must have been a commercial or something, where it was people with disabilities saying, if this is what you expect of me, that's all I'll be. But if you expect more, like that's what I'll live up to. Like allow me to be. Allow
Yeah.
me to become something more. And I,
Absolutely.
without putting that cap on it or that box and
Mhm.
just seeing really what they're capable of is beautiful. I've seen that even with my daughter where sometimes she'll say, I can't do this. And I'm like, maybe you should try first. Though, like,
Right.
can you? Or is it just difficult? Because that's been a new mantra that we have in the house is you can do hard things.
Exactly. And it might take more time for some of us. It might
Yeah.
take a little bit of extra patience and it might take a little bit of accommodations, right?
Yes.
And yet we can, do a lot of things when we have the proper support and when we right practice and making progress. Sometimes we might not get it there on the first try, but we can do a lot of incredible things if we believe, have faith, and we just kind of continue on. um, and really kind of like building, right, like our capacity, our resilience, and our abilities, because
Yeah.
it's there.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. Oh, thank you for sharing that
Yeah,
perspective.
absolutely.
So, kind of in a similar vein, what do you think it is about entrepreneurs specifically that make us continue on through challenges without giving up when times are tough? I mean,
Good
it's
question.
kind of a good,
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. So, I mean, obviously, I think the answer is going to be very different from one person to another.
yeah,
But like for me personally, I think that it is the driving force behind, my why. So, like, why is it that I launched Serenity and I wanted to work one on one with families? Like, what was really the root of that? And to me, it was, of course, I like helping people. Like that's just a natural thing in me that I want to do. And above that, I want to be able to travel without restrictions. I want to be able to go away when I want to go away without having to ask permission from a boss, right? I
yes,
want to be able to be the one to attend my child's therapy sessions, to be able to pick him up if need be and not have someone else do it, or have to rely on other people to be that source of comfort for him
yeah,
when he needs me most. And working in a traditional job, often we're more limited. So, for me, the entrepreneurship, regardless of the challenges, regardless if I have months that are not as successful as maybe I had hoped, planned, or had, necessarily achieved all my goals, it's always the why, and to have that flexibility to be present and to make life the way that I want to and have my career fit into that, to me is worth continuing to try and, yeah, exceed. Does that make sense?
yes, absolutely. I think that's great. I think it's wonderful. How often do you travel? Can I ask? How often?
Yes, you can. Pre-kids, my husband and I genuinely would go somewhere every roughly 3 months.
Okay.
Um, and even then, it would be like around the 2 month mark, and I'm getting the itch to like, go somewhere different. And so, roughly every 3 months, sometimes we would have a month of back-to-back trips. Not always. Now that we have children, I would say it's probably every maybe more, 3 to 4 months, but we still go away multiple times a year.
That's amazing. I think
Yeah, we
that's
just went
great.
away. Yeah, yeah, it's a big
And
part
have
of our life.
have you done that since they were born? Like,
Not since they were born, just because of the pandemic. Like
mm,
flying was very, very restricted. But once Eli turned 6 months, we were like, we can't go another day not taking this boy on a trip. We had talked about it so much when we were expecting him, like what life could look like, how many trips we would go on that first year. You don't have to pay for his flight. Like we can just travel. I'm on maternity leave. We'd figure it out. And so we took him on a road trip across Canada because of the flying restrictions. And then from that point on, I would say every couple months, we usually take the kids somewhere.
that's amazing. I think that's so great. Also,
Thanks.
I think it's really important to note that you said we talked about it a lot. Even before you had them, you discussed it, you figured it out, you knew that that was something that was important that you were going to have as a value. And
Right.
that's so important. Ah, that's
Yeah, make it a
fantastic. I
priority.
have so many light bulbs going off right now. Like,
And I think like we all have our different priorities, whether that's, us as business owners, whether we're, navigating any type of adversity, we all have kind of an end goal.
Yeah.
And we all have what we value the most. And one of the biggest things that I value is travel, which has trickled down to my husband, which we want to trickle down to our children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One other question I have that kind of came up in
Yeah.
when I was thinking about everything that you've said so far. Your son has been diagnosed. Were you diagnosed later on or earlier? Like, is that a recent diagnosis for you? Because I also have heard that women, especially girls, exhibit differently, and a lot of times it's harder to see.
Right.
Um,
That's correct. So yeah, I was diagnosed specifically with ADHD just a year and a half ago. And I'm now 37. So yeah, 35. I think I was about
so
35, 36.
so
And
then
I was
as
diagnosed with ADHD.
okay, so as a follow-up, do you think that that's something you have to kind of be aware of for your daughter since you have a son that is
Yeah.
already diagnosed, and then just to kind of see if
So
it exhibits
yeah,
differently?
100%. So with my son, I feel like I kind of always, I don't want to say always, it's not like he was a 2-month-old baby and I'm like, he's autistic, right? But
Right.
when he was approaching that, like the 16, 18-month mark, there were some things I started to really notice, and it continued to just go on from there. And in all of that, after having children, there were some things that I was struggling more with than ever before, hence more investigation and then the ADHD diagnosis. And then as I'm going through the process of advocating for my son and really diving into like what can autism look like, right?
Yeah.
And there's of course not a one size fits all, but in reading all of that and really realizing like, wait a minute, this checks off for me in my childhood, and this and this, and then reading more about females and the differences, because again, my son might have not presented like the textbook case of what we've known autism to be over the last X amount of years, right? We're growing in knowledge and are understanding more and more every day. And so in saying all that, I'm awaiting my own assessment for autism. And then when it comes to my daughter, there are a lot of different characteristics or traits that I've noticed that are different from my son, but repetitive enough and maybe disruptive enough to her daily life that I'm like, again, wait a minute. So is this more of the ADHD presentation? She's obviously too young for that diagnosis. Or
Yeah.
is this like autism? So we're actually awaiting more assessments for her. One, because of like the genetic link, the
Yeah.
higher likelihood, and then what we are seeing her exhibit some traits. So yes, to that, she's on the
That's so
radar.
Oh, no, that's crazy. That's fascinating to me, first of all. I think all of that is so interesting. I think the brain and the mind is so fascinating, and just our bodies and how we all respond to different things. So, thank you for diving into that with me.
You're welcome.
But so what overall takeaway or lesson do you think that other mompreneurs would be able to use specifically from your experience that you've had?
Yeah, I think that if you desire to, right, either be an entrepreneur or to have your business excel and grow and be successful in whatever way that you envision it to be, because success looks different for all of us, regardless of any adversity that you're facing, keep in mind your why. Write it on a sticky or journal it morning and night. Think of your why, and remember that is the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that none of us want to kind of, grow old and look back and say to ourselves, I wish. And I really don't believe that if you have that drive to be an entrepreneur, that will ever go away. And even though, something might not be as successful as you had hoped, or you're having a really rough month, keep your why, keep that light at the end of the tunnel, because it will get better, and think progress over perfection. I think that's the biggest thing. Get out of our heads perfection, and are you enjoying what you're doing? That's what matters the most.
Yeah. I love that. That's fantastic. How often do you kind of reflect on your why? Because I find that sometimes my why will shift, right? As far as like, look at now you were sleep, like all sleep, because that's where you were
Yes.
in at the moment. And now you're shifting a little bit more. So how often do you kind of look at that why and say, oh, that's a little different now?
I would honestly, I feel like my why is an every single day thing. Maybe that's the ADHD in me, right? Constantly being like, what about this? What about that? And why am I doing this? And where should this go? And what should I do next? And is this in alignment with, my life and who I am? For me, I think it's kind of an everyday reminder. Just this morning, my son had almost like a medical therapy session. So I needed to be available. And thankfully, because I'm an entrepreneur, I have that. And, even driving him back to childcare after, I literally thought if I worked in the regular kind of 9 to 5 life or corporate or whatever it may be, I could not do this. Like this would be too difficult. I'd have to get it approved. There's so many things.
Yeah.
This is where I'm supposed to be. So even like kind of daily reminders, even if it's tough, reminding ourselves like this is where I'm supposed to be, or this is the reason I'm going to continue to try.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's wonderful. I also remind myself daily, and sometimes I have looked at 9 to 5 jobs, just, where you
Mhm.
get that moment where you're like, I'm going to burn this all to the ground.
Yes.
And then looked at it and looked at the requirements, and I'm like, I would get fired. I would get fired from this and so quickly because there's no way I would be able to maintain that kind of,
Right.
um, schedule on a regular basis. Ah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. So what is the best way for others to find you if they would like to work with you, learn more about you, just be in your space and
Yeah, I love people in this space. I would love to connect with anybody who's interested in any of the topics that I talked about. So for sleep help, I have an Instagram page. It is Serenity Sleep Consulting on Instagram, and there's a lot of free resources there that they can access for those that are interested in, neurodiversity, the autism journey, and hopefully inspiration that you can travel with your special needs child regardless of the challenges. They can find me again on Instagram, but at Dream Jar Travels.
wonderful. And I will have everything in the description below for them too, but just in case they're listening, they can still find you. Um, Thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure for me. I could talk to you all day and just ask you so many questions. I feel like
Thank
it's
you.
not just a wealth of knowledge, but also you're fun and bubbly.
Oh, thank you. I had a blast, and I hope that whoever's listening, that you were able to feel a little bit of spark, a little bit of inspiration, and just the reminder that you're amazing and just keep on going.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much. Your story is inspirational, so is everybody else's, but your willingness to be open about it is very much needed, I think, in this time, and it's very appreciated, at least from me, but I'm sure from the listeners as well. And for those of you out there facing your own adversity, like she said, know that you're not alone. That's the whole point of why we're doing this. And when you need an extra hand or mind for brainstorming during your mompreneur journey, we would love to work with you through the Mom Elevated Society, but reach out if you need any assistance from Kayla as well. Sorry, I had a brain fart there for a minute. But I appreciate you being here, Kayla. Thank you so much. And you
Thank
will
you.
find monthly check-ins for goal setting and assessing, and so much more for both your business and your mom life and the Mom Elevated Society. We are restructuring things, and we're also going to include Gift Yourself Grace in the program as well. So you'll have quarterly help through all of that as well. So until next time, keep shooting for the stars.